All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Joshua Basin Water District for Wednesday, July 19th, 2017 at 6:30. Fraser, would you lead us in the pledge? Please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good, Fraser, thank you. Determination of quorum.
Madam President, Director Johnson is absent with an excused absence, and all four other directors are here, so you have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 4, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no opposition, it goes unanimously. Public comment. This is a time set aside for public comment on any district-related matter not appearing on the agenda. Government code prohibits the board from taking action on these items, but they may be referred for further consideration. Please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Any public comment on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to item number 5, the consent calendar. Matters on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted in a single motion without discussion. Any board member or member of the public may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and acted on separately. The only item on the consent calendar are the draft minutes for the July 5th, 2017 regular meeting of the Board of Directors. Any changes or additions to those? And if not, may I have a motion?
This may sound dumb. I didn't remember if Keith was here at our last meeting,
He was not?
because he was on the staff listed as present at the
Oh.
meeting.
No worries.
No, he's here.
We'll take him off.
He was here.
Oh,
Was he here? Okay, that's terrible.
Okay.
I feel bad, I didn't remember.
He's a
Thank
very
you.
quiet person.
No, he was here.
Yeah, because I
Okay.
was over there, and we were hearing his yeah.
Okay, I apologize to Keith.
Okay, so there are no corrections, so I have a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposition, that was approved unanimously. We'll move to item number 7, approve the investment policy. Recommend that the board approve the investment policy. Susan?
This is a routine matter. Annually, the board must re-adopt the investment policy, which authorizes the type of investments that the district can make with our reserves. This requirement was enacted in response to the Orange County bankruptcy, which is, my gosh, probably close to 20 years, 15, 20 years ago by now. Time just flies, whereby the officials in charge did not know these sorts of really junk bonds, for lack of a better term, that were being invested, where their monies were being invested, and they lost an exorbitant amount of money as a result of that. So they were uninformed. The law changed so that the officials with responsibility for the investments have to know what types of investments are authorized, and those are the only investments that can be made. So it's an important thing, I think, to mention that the responsibility in investing public funds, first is to safeguard the principal. So always, first, we want to make sure that we're not losing our principal money. Secondly, is that we need to meet our cash flow needs. Our money needs to be liquid enough so that we can get our hands on it and we can meet those cash flow obligations. And then lastly, is to get that return on investment. So most important to safeguard the principal. Currently, all of our investments are maintained at the State of California Local Agency Investment Fund. I can answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none?
Well, you know me, I'm a little slow. May I?
Yes?
It looked like, when I was looking at this, that we have our internal rules and guidance, policy, philosophy about how we want to invest. And then these LAIF folks, local agency investment fund folks that have responsibility, I guess, for all of our investments, they have
Well, they're also a state, they're a state organization, so
Yeah.
they have, copious obligations and requirements as well.
So did we write a policy based on our own specific needs and find out that they matched that very well? Or did we see what they did in their policies, which they're like this?
Yeah.
And then we says, yeah, we'll take that. Was it us first, or was it?
It was us first. We said, here are things that meet that obligation of safeguarding principal and liquidity, and lastly, interest, and then said, here are all the kinds of investments that can meet that requirement, of which LAIF is one of them.
Very well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I did look through a lot of that stuff, and it seems like it's all conservative, the investments are conservative.
Yes.
Which would probably mean too that without so much risk, that our payback,
Earnings.
return earnings would be somewhat less, but I would be very inclined to identify, matter of fact, I do, that's the way I do it. I'm very cautious about those kinds of things.
It's the
And
nature
then
of finance.
everybody in these things says that there's a liquidity to it, too. So I'm very pleased with it.
There's no real change, is there?
No.
Yeah.
So I don't have a question, but I have a comment, suggestion for possible change. In reviewing the investment policy, I noticed that a lot of our investment criteria are a certain rating by Standard & Poor's Corporation or better. And recently in my own retirement portfolio, I noticed that a certain part of S&P had been acquired by a company, CFRA, so then I did a little bit more digging, and what I found was that the proper name for Standard & Poor's Corporation for our purposes would be Standard & Poor's Global Incorporated.
Okay.
So I was thinking that it would probably be good just to change it to that, even though it's a pretty, people know
We
what
know who it is,
Standard &
right,
Poor's
okay,
is, so
sure,
that's my only suggested
Oh, okay.
change.
sure.
Rebecca?
And Gary, who are you said a certain part of the S&P was acquired by?
Well, by a group called Sephra. They, in September 2016, they announced that they entered into an agreement to acquire S&P Global Market Intelligence Equity and Fund Research business from S&P Global, but then I did a little more digging, and S&P Global still exists, so they just sold part of their business, but S&P Global Incorporated is the one that does the ratings,
Yeah.
all these different bond
They're the
ratings.
standard, right.
Right. So,
Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments from the public? Stephen?
Stephen Whitman, Joshua Tree resident. Susan, what is our current rate of return on investment capital with LAIF?
I think .73, something like that is the last.
Excuse me, I
I
missed
saw.
the first digit.
.73, I believe.
Point, okay, thank you.
Okay, David?
Well, David Fick, Joshua Tree. To revisit the past, back in the Megadump fights, and there was a long history on that, but
Back on the what fights?
Megadump fights,
Oh.
fighting Megadumps, garbage.
Yes, yes.
Well, okay, when Orange County went bankrupt, what they did to generate income was cut their tipping fees in half. So that was a great disruption to the trash stream of the general Los Angeles area, greater Los Angeles area, because Orange County literally cut their fees in half, which meant that all the garbage went to Orange County for probably 5 or 6 years in that situation. And that was how they made some income to recover what they lost in their investments.
David, you blow me away. Okay, fun facts.
Yeah, fun facts.
Is there anything else? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve the investment policy.
Do I have a second?
second that.
All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Aye.
Aye.
So it's unanimous, and we have our investment policy. Item number 8, approval of updated job description for regulatory compliance administrative analyst. And we'll start, Mr. Sauer.
Okay, so the recommendation is that the board approve the updated job description for this position. Basically, it's part of our ongoing effort, especially with the hiring of Sarah Johnson as our HR manager, to update job descriptions that are woefully antiquated. This one was written in 2007 as a senior administrative assistant. The purpose at that time was to provide administrative support to the operations section of the district. However, within 6 months after this position being filled by Randy Mays, Chief of Operations Marina West left. Randy and Jim were promoted to supervisors, and the former general manager added additional duties to this position without ever changing the job description. That included development of the maintenance management software program and regulatory compliance reporting for county, state, and federal permits and projects. We have utilized this project, or this position, recently. It was instrumental in the writing of the Chromium 6 compliance plan under the direction of former DWRO Seth Zilke, and also was the lead on the financial assistance request for Chromium 6 studies, which has resulted in $500,000 grant and a $2.1 million interest-free loan. The current job description is out of date, and Mr. Randy Mays has been working out of class for many years, so it's an attempt to put that position, accurately describe what the position is doing. And as you know, Randy is in an interim Director of Water Resources and Operations position right now. And if he's selected for that position going forward, then we'll recruit for this new position. If not, then he'll be placed into his former position with an accurately described job description. Current salary range of $52,000 to $69,000 is $8,000 at the lower level range, lower step, and $11,000 higher than the senior administrative assistant position. And I think this salary reflects the complexity and the responsibilities of the position. So it's my recommendation to the board that this position job description be updated and approved by the board.
Thank you.
And the report.
Any comments from the board? Start with Rebecca.
Kurt, could you explain that one time again about Randy? Right now, he is the interim Director of Water Resources. At the moment, he's in this job for which this description is written, but hadn't been written correctly before?
No, so he was the senior administrative assistant. Okay. We have moved him into the interim Director of Water Resources and Operations vacated by Seth Zilke.
Okay.
So if he goes back to this position, this would be an updated job description of what that position is currently doing. If he's successful in the competition for the DWRO, then we would recruit for this position with a updated and current job description. Much like we updated the accounts receivable and the human resources manager job descriptions. And there's a couple more job descriptions that we also need to work on, and we're also doing our due diligence for a staffing study, but to me, this is housekeeping.
It is the complex administrative functions of the district. It's
Highly complex.
pretty heavy-duty stuff, my God. And not only that, the person has to be able to bend, twist, stoop, crouch, climb, crawl, balance, and endure fumes and gases from time to time.
And lead tall buildings.
So thank you guys for your work on this.
Thank you. Tom?
No comment.
Gary?
Just to clarify, then, their position title would change and their salary schedule would change?
Yes.
No, I think it's very appropriate.
Well, anyone who actually read through the job description, it's pretty overwhelming.
Yes, it is.
It's filled on an interim basis right now, and I'm just in awe that anyone can handle that, Ms. Ellen. Because they expect you really to jump tall buildings in a single leap. Truly, unbelievable. Okay, any comments from the public? Stephen?
Just popped into my head, wasn't prepared. Hearing Rebecca's comments about all the physical requirements, does that mean that anyone who's disabled in a wheelchair or has other disabilities is disqualified for working for this district? And if so, how the hell do we get away with that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll let the general manager
It
take that
doesn't
one.
mean that anybody that's disabled is disqualified and reasonable accommodation needs to be made. It's a state law.
Yes, and that's actually in the job description. Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the updated job description?
I will. I move that the board approve the updated job description for the position of regulatory compliance administrative analyst.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 9, approval of updated water flow model for district operations. Mr. Sauer.
Okay, the recommendation is that you authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with Dudek Engineering to update our water flow model. It's in the budget at $26,500. That budget was approved 1 or 2 board meetings ago. Water flow models are used to analyze and predict current and future demands and situations. They can be used to model emergency conditions and predict how various mainline extensions will affect existing operations. Our current model was updated in 2005. It's 12 years old. Since that time, we've added wells 16 and 17. We've taken a couple wells offline. We've closed a couple of pressure reduction valves that used to allow us to serve zones A and B from zone C, but because of 16 and 17, we don't have to do that anymore. We've also had changes in additions of mainline projects, and since we've had increased water conservation, the actual demands, both daytime and nighttime demands, need to be recalculated. And most importantly, well, as importantly to me, the existing 2005 model was based off of the 2002 master plan model, which didn't even include all of the laterals, only the main lines. The 2005 update included most of those laterals, but not all of them. And as an example, because of planning for the potential that another well would go offline while well 14 is down, Dudek Engineering has actually had to add in well 16 and well 17 to a flow model that I requested be done as part of our preventative planning for such an emergency. So I think it's just time to update the model, and that'll allow us to look at how the system can actually be run more efficiently. And it will also allow us to do fire flow analysis without having to do actual fire flows, thereby conserving water and not having any negative impacts on commercial operations and private homes when you do the fire flow model out in the field, when you do the fire flow out in the field. So,
Thank you. Any comments from the board? We'll start with Director Unger.
I have none.
Director Flown?
This thing that's now about 12 or more years old is what we're supposed to be using to evaluate certain emergencies that we might require, that we might encounter, sorry. And that right there makes it a yes for me. This substantially tells me that this is, for emergency purposes, this current one that we have is useless. And I think we need to spend the money for this.
Thank you. Director Hunt?
Well, I echo your comments, and in terms of providing service to everybody in the district, it's important that we have an updated water flow model, and especially if, not all of the current facilities are, have been considered, and not all the laterals. To me, it's a no-brainer, so I support it.
Very important, so I support it as well. Any public comment on this? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the updated water flow model for district operations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? So that is done. Discussion of Assembly Bill 1000, amending the water code. Mr. Sauer.
So somehow I have this impression that there's a lot of people in the audience that came for this particular item, since nobody's commented on the first three. So let's just get to it here. So, Assembly Bill 1000, which was submitted by Assemblywoman Friedman, is written in such a way that the Mojave Water Agency was concerned with the language. And on July 9th or 10th, Mojave Water Agency contacted all of their customers, us, High Desert, Bighorn, 29 folks up north, and expressed their concern over the way the legislation had been crafted. And they asked that various water districts support them in their efforts to have the language changed, because they were concerned with their ability to take water out of the aquifers where they have stored water from the State Water Project and distribute it, and/or when they had a surplus, sell it to other water agencies. So I put it on the agenda so that you all could consider whether or not you wanted us to support the Mojave Water Agency. Since that time, the Mojave Water Agency General Manager has spoken with Assemblywoman Friedman's staff. They have agreed that they will consider verbiage, proposed legislation that Mojave Water Agency will suggest to them. And the Assembly has also agreed, that not only this bill but others, that this bill will not be heard until after the summer recess. So according to Yvonne Hester, the Mojave Water Agency Public Affairs Officer and Legislative Liaison, they don't need any action on our part at this time, and they will keep us informed. So basically, you don't need to take any action because the legislation as proposed is going to be different when it's heard a month or more from now.
Thank you.
And I was going to suggest that you just let it go at that, but there's a bunch of people here.
There's a bunch of people here who I know want to talk about it, so can the board wait and comment after the public?
Board can wait.
Okay, with that, we will open it to public comment. Frazier. Please go to the podium and give your name and your city of residence, please.
Thank you. My name is Frazier Haney, and I'm a resident here in Joshua Tree. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Mojave Desert Land Trust. I'm our conservation director, and you all are very familiar with us, so I'll save a lot of the background. But I do want to state the Mojave Desert Land Trust mission is to protect the Mojave Desert's ecosystem and its scenic and cultural resource values. And that's why we're here tonight. That's why we're supportive of the intent behind AB 1000. So we've made a lot of investments across the California desert to conserve land inside our national parks and inside of the new Mojave Trails National Monument, along with the wildlife linkages here in Joshua Tree, to try and achieve our mission. We're concerned over the Cadiz's project possible effect on the natural resources in the East Mojave, specifically and most importantly the springs that are out in the East Mojave, and what we view as some unsound science that backs the project up. Two of our nation's most respected scientific institutions, the U.S. Geological Survey and the National Park Service, have both expressed their concern about the impacts of the project to resources in the desert and about the science behind the project. And in any case, no matter what the overdraft estimates that you use are, the project does call for an overdraft of a desert aquifer that right now is naturally intact. So we have a lot at stake out there in the East Mojave. This project would affect a huge area, and that's why we want to have AB 1000. The intent behind the bill, as we understand it, is to get the State Lands Commission and California Department of Fish and Wildlife into a position where they can help provide regulatory oversight for any project that wants to pump groundwater out of those remote desert aquifers. So we understand the legislation is being worked on right now to address some of the concerns about it, but we wanted to come and voice our support to the board tonight. So thanks for the chance to do so.
Thank you very much, Fraser. Next. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Chris Clark. I'm a Joshua Tree resident. I'm also the relatively newly hired California Desert Program Manager for the National Parks Conservation Association, the new Seth Steyer. And Fraser said a lot of what I had intended to say tonight, so I wanted to reaffirm that the NPCA was involved in crafting the language as it exists so far of AB 1000, and the intention is absolutely not to interfere with the normal operations of local water districts in the Morongo Basin and nearby in any way. And it's my understanding that Assemblymember Friedman and her staff are actively working on adjusting the language to reflect concerns of the Mojave Water Agency and similar organizations. I wanted to offer myself as an information resource. I know that you folks are pretty far along in your discussions of this bill and of your relationship, your position on the Cadiz project, but I'm doing this job now, and part of my job is to make sure that people in the community have access to information that is helpful. So just wanted to make sure and offer my help in that regard. And also to thank you for signing on as a board to the letter to Secretary of the Interior Zinke on Cadiz. It was very helpful, and we are very much appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next. Ida.
Dear board members,
Excuse me, your name and your
I'm
city,
Ida
please,
Foreman, over a 30-year resident of Joshua Tree. My family was deeply involved in the Bolo Rail Cycle Megadump Project fight in 1995 to 99. My husband David was president of the Desert Environmental Response Team in 1996, DIRT, a political action committee, was the leading grassroots group fighting this project throughout our huge county. Cadiz was a great ally back then because we had the same goal, to protect the desert aquifer from pollution. It happened to be much of the aquifer under their land was threatened by this proposed megadump and its resulting leachate. It wouldn't have done their farm any good with importing unknown vectors upwind with 7 miles of trash trains per day. We had a shared enemy, the bribed county majority, Waste Management Incorporated, and Santa Fe Railroad. My husband attended all the civil court proceedings involving Cadiz and Jerry Smith versus County and Waste Management Incorporated. There were also criminal proceedings that had 3 convictions of Bolo Rail Cycle general managers, head of county planning, chairman of the county planning commission, county liaison officer of the Megadump project, and the felon henchman who wiretapped the Cadiz farmhouse. Why Joshua Tree? The question has come up, why should Joshua Tree weigh in on this? Well, I was here before the board 22 years ago in 1995 asking for support of a resolution against the Bolo Rail Cycle as crafted by the late Susan Lucky Riley, which was adopted by the board. Back in 95 to 99, it was discovered somewhat through the aid of Cadiz hired detectives that there were hundreds of thousands of dollars in associated bribery to the majority of the county supervisors. The central opposition to this megadump battle was Joshua Tree and Cadiz. Our house became headquarters for this forefront election battle in 1996. We had county supervisor-elect over 36 people at a coordinated meeting at our residence. This was before Facebook, internet, and foremost faxing. This megadump battle was a year or so after the Desert Protection Act of 1994, which had the support of the only community in the Morongo Basin. Yeah, Joshua Tree. The Mojave Desert Land Trust is based in Joshua Tree. The Morongo Basin Conservation Association is based in Joshua Tree. The local NPCA branch office is located in Joshua Tree. The Morongo Basin Municipal Advisory Council is based in Joshua Tree. The county building is based in Joshua Tree. Heck, even Enemy Graphics is based in Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree has been on the forefront of concerns involving the Mojave Desert for decades, and here it is again weighing in on a regional concern that affects the Mojave Desert. Please consider and sign on to the California State Bill 1000. Thank you for your attention in this long battle for our desert water.
Well, you timed that perfectly.
Well, said.
Next, David.
Okay. Mine might be a little longer.
You can have her
Good evening, Board. David Fick, Joshua Tree resident for over 3 decades. I reviewed the Q&A of Leslie Thornburg of Cadiz at the previous Joshua Basin Water District on July 5th through our trusted YouTube videos and have the following comments. The failed water storage and withdrawal Cadiz project, circa 1999. This was also a water theft project with the supposition that the Colorado River would have enough wet years to make it viable. This is fiction. The Colorado River had a high water mark 800 years ago, and its quantity of water has been in decline since then. The project was going to withdraw up to 150,000 acre-feet of water per year and return that water when the Colorado River had a surplus, which would be never. Stringent CEQA, no reason for federal overview, as quoted by Leslie. The CEQA lawsuits are a completion of the CEQA process. There were a minimum of 6 lawsuits, including NPCA, the Dry Lake Salt Miners, and others. All those lawsuits were grouped together and tried in an Orange County Superior Court. The judge never really had her thoughts together, knowing that she would be appealed whatever direction she went, and said that the lead agency of Santa Margarita Water District was a problem. It was. It was appealed and then tried in an Orange County Appeals Court. Want to figure out that outcome? The lead agency was the Santa Margarita Water District in Orange County. Orange County comes up a lot there lately. It had a huge conflict of interest due to the fact that they had every reason to approve the CEQA EIR and have financial gain, and none to find the EIR inadequate or deficient. None. The county approved this on May 1st, 2012. They were promised 20% of the water take in kickback to gain approval. Supervisor campaign funds were donated a minimum of $70,000 by Cadiz that we know of. And the supervisor chair's re-election campaign was based in Santa Margarita with a Santa Margarita resident as treasurer. Oh, and the Cadiz project was excluded from the San Bernardino County Groundwater Management Plan. It's never been called a railroad project, was quoted by Leslie. I'm attaching a news article from the Cadiz website called the Cadiz Southeastern Railway. That, along with the proposed fire hydrants all along the railroad for all those pesky trestle fires, was an attempt to make their project relevant to the Arizona and California Railroad that had an old BLM right-of-way along their railroad. If they were successful, they would avoid the federal USGS oversight that would firmly kill this project with facts about the actual water recharge and environmental damage of withdrawal of up to 75,000 acre-feet per year. They say 50, it's up to 75. The Cadiz water theft project has been on political CPR several times and has resorted to a Hail Mary for passage. They got it in the name of Trump. I'm also...
Thank you, David. Sorry.
Okay. Well, you got the rest in written form.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Tom.
Tom O'Keefe from Joshua Tree. I'm speaking tonight because I was involved in this Cadiz issue at every meeting that happened since it became an issue some 6 or 7 years ago, supporting MPCA, supporting everybody in this community with regards to what this project was about. I remember as a kid I got this album by the Rolling Stones called Sympathy for the Devil. And I want to say I don't have any sympathy at all for Cadiz. I was at a meeting in Orange County where the people from our group didn't get to talk until 11 p.m., where they waited till a room that at one point was maybe filled with 500 people, and the only people remaining to address the board were from Joshua Tree. They held us off till the very end. We had a little peek in a room with a bunch of guys with all the recording gear. It was like we were looking in a room filled with CIA agents snooping on us to be sure they knew who was presenting what and what they were going to do about it. Now we've got people getting into the Department of Interior that are intimately involved with this corporation. Our water district to collude with a company for their benefit in any way, shape, or form. When I read this very simple 2 or 3 paragraphs in this AB 1000 bill, that clearly shows they're looking out for a national monument, a national park, aquifers that are ancient, that are clearly public interest properties. And to understand anything could come across this board in any way, shape, or form that aids this corporation in being able to move forward with a project that is only built to be able to put in Orange County homes throughout a desert area in Orange County, in Santa Margarita, on a stretch of 200 or 241, going down through Trabuco, where you'll see another 150,000 homes go in, those swimming pools and everything else. As our desert aquifer feeds that opportunity, it's a sin, and I stand totally against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anybody else? Leslie?
Leslie Thornburg, Katie's. I'd like to start by saying, David, if you'd like to talk about any of the topics you talked about earlier and address the actual project, I'm happy to address you with that at any time, and also anybody on the board. But let's address the topic at hand. AB 1000, this decision is not about Katie's. The decision is whether to oppose AB 1000 is not about Katie's. Even without taking a position on Katie's, or even if not supportive of Katie's, this bill is a bad idea for everyone in California because of the precedent it sets. The area includes the Joshua Basin Water District. As the bill reads now, it includes part of the Joshua Basin and the Mojave Water Agency, as we all know. Even without Joshua Basin Water District, it sets a bad precedent. Even if the bill to be revised to exclude these areas, it still sets a dangerous precedent. The precedent would set be disregard for CEQA as the final arbiter in the environmental protection. It says to any water district, any government agency, any private company wanting to improve or develop a project that once they do everything CEQA requires, and the courts uphold their EIR, the opponents could convince a legislator to draw a law to require additional review, stalling their project indefinitely. I'd ask you to think about these thoughts before you move forward, and I thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, as Kurt said, the bill is being amended, therefore no action will be taken this evening, so we do thank you, though, for your input. It's very valuable, and we will take it into consideration if and when that comes up again. Anything else, Kurt? Anything
We have
else?
a chance to comment.
You want to comment now?
Yeah, I would like to comment.
All right.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that in reviewing the draft language of the bill, as some of you know, that at the last meeting that I voted in favor of a letter opposing the Cadiz project. I am personally opposed to it. And in reading the bill, I wanted to support it because I think the intent is very good, but I was concerned as written that it was a little too vague and might have unintended consequences that the Mojave Water Agency is concerned with. So I'm really, and my first thought was, would Mojave Water Agency be willing to work with the legislator to redraft the bill to address their concerns while preserving the intent of the bill? And so I was really pleased to hear that that's exactly what they're doing. So I hope we have an opportunity to bring this up again, the bill as amended, for consideration of support of the bill. Thank you.
All right, anything else before we move on? Because, as I said, we're not doing anything with that tonight. We'll go on to item number 12, the General Manager's Report. Mr. Sauer.
Have I mentioned well 14?
Well, I think at one point or another.
Yeah. All right, so, to be quite honest with you, I can't even remember what my...
Excuse me, anybody that wishes to leave who has said their piece, you're free, feel free to leave.
won't feel offended. I guess I should put my microphone on here. All right, so anyway, we've been working on the upper gravel pack for the past several weeks. And I can report to you that on Monday, July 17th, Friday, July 14th, we conducted 5 separate tests on the water. 4 of the 5 were absent for total coliform. And however, our heterotrophic plate counts were initially high and then came down to about 1,200. They need to be at 500 to meet state standards. We ran the well for 18 hours on Saturday and 18 hours on Sunday to continue flushing it. And on Monday, we took tests, and everything, all 7 tests came back positive rather than absent. But the quantitres were between less than 1, which means an absent, and 3. And our HPC counts are down around 100. And then for July 18th, Tuesday, we took 3 tests. They all came back absent, and we're awaiting the HPC results. So we will be testing the well tomorrow. We'll be testing the well on Friday. We'll be running the well for 18 hours a day until Monday. We'll take some more samples, and we will have all the results back for our samples through Friday as of Sunday afternoon and Monday morning. And if it comes back absent for total coliform and less than 500 HPC, we'll be going to the state to put the well back online. If it doesn't, we've also scheduled a meeting on Tuesday with Dudek Engineering, pump men, and Tri-County, Eric Bradbury, and my staff and I, and we'll be coming up with an additional plan for what we're going to do next on well 14. So right now it looks promising, but I think I've sat in this room before and told you that it looks promising. And I'll throw out a little thank you to the staff. In order to treat the gravel pack, the estimate for the pump company to mobilize and treat with 20,000 gallons of chlorine and new water 410 was $12,000. We've done that twice with our own internal staff for a savings of about $20,000, and they're on top of it, so.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any board comment on that? Seeing none, anything from the public? All I can say is that, first of all, when we run the well, it is going back into the aquifer. It's found a secret hole to go back down, so it's not going out and necessarily evaporating. And I really think that the board wants to thank the staff for sticking to it. This has been a major problem for us. And to me, it points out the whole problem of kicking it down the road, letting some other board deal with it. Don't maintain your system. I mean, it's too precious for us not to be doing what we need to do to keep it working the way it needs to be working. So this is a really good object lesson for all of us. So thank you.
So wait, there's more.
Yes, sir. Oh.
So conservation for June of 2017 compared to June of 2013, we were down 14%. And you all remember how hot June was. So that's conservation down 14%. Good for all of you. To me, it means our revenues are down 14%, which will affect our rate study. We're in conversations with Mojave Water Agency on water storage. Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and the Department of Water Resources is another act, and redefining the boundary between Warren Valley Basin, High Desert, and Joshua Tree Subbasin. We had a half-hour conversation, and we are now going to be working with High Desert and Mojave Water Agency, and DWR to redefine the boundary to be at the fault line between the two of us rather than the adjudicated areas drawn in properly by DWR some 9 years ago. And in case anybody heard, yesterday the State Water Resource Control Board voted unanimously to establish an MCL for a chemical called 1,2,3-TCP. And I want everybody to know that we have tested our waters for 1,2,3-TCP, and we do not have any. And we have a draft bench pilot program to treat chromium-6 without filtration, which we'll be taking to the board, to the Division of Drinking Water in the next 2 weeks for approval. And hopefully we can treat chromium-6 without filtration and without a bunch of waste product. So, and everything else is just peachy.
Haven't been doing much, have you?
Now, we're sort of sitting around enjoying the air conditioning.
Any comments from the board before we move to the public? Seeing none, anybody in the public? Thank you, Kurt. You're doing an amazing job, and we really, really appreciate your stick-to-itiveness, especially on well 14.
Thank you, and as you all know, I wouldn't be doing as well if I didn't have the staff that I have.
Yes, you've been awesome stuff. Okay, the director's comments, item 13. Director's comments on meetings attended, comments and future agenda items. Bob couldn't be here tonight. He went to the Mojave Water Agency. As you know, they're tracking the AB 1000, and he said that the Mojave Board appeared split on Katie's project, so we'll have to wait and see, but they are tracking it. And that was his report from the Mojave Water Agency meeting. Citizens Advisory Committee, I'm kind of out of order. Karen, you're next.
Karen Tracy reporting as the president of the Citizens Advisory Committee. We met on July 12th. We were 5 of 6, so there was one absentee. We had 4 members of the public. We talked for just over an hour. Most of that time was spent speaking about how much water costs. We talked about the study that was done by UCLA for making drinking water affordable for everyone in the state and how that's gone, the process that has gone through to get to the Water Resources Control people and how they're looking at addressing communities, disadvantaged communities, and how they're going to figure out how much people spend on water, how to help them spend appropriately on water. I was surprised by some of the information in this study that we're a long ways from the communities who have 75-80% of their residents below the poverty line. So that's the scenario that set up the need for this study. We're disadvantaged, but we're nowhere near some of the people who are mentioned in this study, so there's need for this. And I was also surprised by how much work the state does to address those at the poverty line and below. This was an eye-opening for me. We also talked about our own rate study, which is coming up, and rate study in the water district world means your rates are going up. So if you're within the sound of my voice and you're part of the ratepayers of Joshua Basin Water District, I'm a ratepayer, I'm a consumer of water, and you need to be involved in this discussion, and you can be by coming to the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. The last quarter hour was spent going over Cadiz and AB 1000. I was introduced to it at this meeting and what it might mean and how confusing it is. It's been pretty well discussed tonight, and I will only add that I can wholeheartedly endorse the old saying that if you respect the law and enjoy eating sausage, you should not watch either one of them being made. It's really, really complicated and a lot of words and a lot of meetings, and you wear yourself out This is probably going to be in front of us for a long time. We heard a staff report from the general manager about well 14, and that seems to be a moving target if you're trying to stay abreast of what's going on with it. I'm glad we're inching closer, and we have been hopeful before. We are more so now. Again, if you're within the sound of my voice, you're invited to come to the next Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, have a say in the rates of your water. It'll be September 12th in this room, 6 p.m.
Thank you very much, Karen. Public Information Officer Kathleen Radnich.
Greetings. I can't top the sausage. I can't visual. Yeah. Briefly, the summer wildcrafting class, the first of 4, is next week, Thursday, here in the room. The Joshua National Park graduate Student Conservation Associate for Restoration, Elizabeth Byrne, will be leading this first class. It's an assignment the park gave her, and I'm excited to hear her presentation on the basics before we go out and collect and do wildcrafting. So she will be the one teaching. It's 1 hour. Again, it's here, 10 to 11. And just a quick reminder, because it's happening everywhere, and people actually do even come to me at the market, but if you see water where water shouldn't be, don't guess. Just pick up the phone, call the water district, whether it's the middle of the night or if it's the weekend. Don't assume someone else has called it in, please, because our guys really just want to get them when they're small. When they get big, it kills their day. So just call the main phone number and we'll get a hold of the guys. They're on duty 24/7. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to item number 14, future director meetings and training opportunities. The first two, the Finance Committee and the Water Resources Operations Committee, have been canceled. So the next meeting will be whenever it is. I don't remember when the dates are. The Mojave Water Agency Board of Directors meeting on the 27th is Director Flones. And the Technical Advisory Committee, the TAC, is going to be on August 3rd. That's a windshield field trip. And they're going to look at the transition zone. And I thought maybe that was between the mountains and the desert. It turns out it's something to do with the Mojave River. And since I don't know what it is, I am going on that. I am the rep. Anyone else from the board that wishes to go, and probably even anybody from the public that wish to go, just let me know and I'll turn your name in and we'll carpool up to Mojave. They're taking a bus and it is a windshield tour because you don't want to be walking around in August up there either. So with that, I've got you. I will let you know when that happens.
I just wanted to comment if
Oh,
it's okay.
yes.
The transition zone is in a section of the Mojave River, and the Land Trust is working on acquiring the
Yeah,
Palisades
you
Ranch.
should-
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
that we have you, that does not amplify, but it's for Bob so
Sure.
that he gets your voice.
Fraser Haney, Joshua Tree. I just wanted to comment that the field trip that day is going to the Palisades Ranch, which is in the transition zone. And that's a property that the Land Trust is currently working on acquiring. It's 1,700 acres, so if there's other questions about that transition zone area, please consider me a source of information.
Why do they call it the transition zone?
There's faulting in the area, so the river shows up and disappears a few times in there. And it's the transition zone and the adjudication between the upper reaches of the adjudication around Victorville and Apple Valley and the lower reaches around Barstow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very useful.
I'll see you there.
And you are going to come?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, very good. So if there's nothing else, do I have a motion for adjournment? It's got to be one of you guys.
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
See, it's unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for speaking out on something that's very important to all of us. Really do appreciate it. And welcome to Joshua Tree. Nice to have you here.